Okay. Uh, Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Abhinav joining from India. Today we have a workshop named Magic Wheelchair, bringing out a superhero in all of us. So this workshop is hosted by Mrs. Chinloo Lama from 3D Experience Lab, Dassault Systems. So this workshop is about a brief introduction about Magic Wheelchair, a non-profit organization helping children in wheelchair. So do note that this conference is recorded. So if you want to turn your video off, you can just turn your video off. And do comment in the chat box like where you're coming from so that we can know you better. So without further ado, we can directly go to the workshop. Over to you, Mrs. Chinloo Lama.
Thank you, Abhinav. Hi, everyone. I'm Chinloo, and I'm actually going to, since it looks like we have a small group, I think what I'll do is do the presentation, but feel free if you have any questions to either directly send it on the chat or I don't see why you can interrupt me since it's such a small group, but I do have a lot to share. So if you're patient with me, I'm actually going to begin the presentation. Let's start with that. Thank you very much. So a little bit of background. Right now, I am currently working at Dassault Systems. I started out as a mechanical engineer and then very quickly decided to go into an area where my artistic side could come through, and so went into computer graphics design. And now I'm actually a user experience designer. So I actually am responsible for how our software is interacted with on different devices, as well as just overall experience as they use, as engineers and designers use our software. So it's been a really exciting time. And at the same time, I've been kind of working closer with our 3D Experience Lab in our Boston community, Boston campus. So I'll speak a bit about that as we move ahead. So let's jump right in. What I'm planning on doing, and as we all know, we're kind of all stuck in our houses, so pardon my dog barking in the background or any kind of weird noises. I'll do my best to speak over them. So these are the areas that I'll be talking to you about. If you're not sure what Magic Wheelchair is, or it's just an interesting term for you, I definitely will go into the details. And just so you know, that all the links and pictures in this presentation, I've made into a PDF so that we'll share it in the chat later on at the end of the presentation. And I'll talk a bit about how Dassault Systems has been involved with Magic Wheelchair, this nonprofit organization. We'll also go into our specific staff projects that we've participated in, and so on and so forth. So deeper and deeper into the experience. And I'm sure you guys will have great questions and we'll tackle that as well. So jumping into the story, Magic Wheelchair was started by pretty much, the story starts with a father and his son. This is Ryan Weimer on the left, and he's basically the founder of this amazing organization. He has two sons who have been wheelchair bound. They suffer from muscular atrophy, and basically it was always something that they've dealt with at home. But one day, one Halloween, his son asked if he could be a pirate. And so Ryan thought, why not make him a pirate inside a pirate ship, since he's going to be going around in his wheelchair. So basically, that was how it all started. The costume that extended from his child into something bigger. So he was hooked. He went and learned the necessary skills to work with foam, turned his garage into a makeshift shop, and just, basically started a movement. He got, let's see, I see Christine Getman is about to join the session. It's great. Christine Getman is one of the executive directors at Magic Wheelchair, so maybe she can help me answer questions later too. So yeah, this movement started, and it started in the Kickstarter. And from there, it engaged a lot of experts from the industries that you're familiar with for cinematography, for special effects artistry. All of these places got hooked and started helping out. And people who are makers, who are garage shop workers, and just wanted to just take their tools and make these amazing costumes, started jumping in and helping out. And since then, they've blossomed into this amazing nonprofit organization. Basically, their goal is to build epic costumes for kiddos in wheelchairs at no cost to families. And these aren't just, you know, cardboard costumes. They are legit, like high quality. As you can see some of the images on the bottom. Their mission really is to bring hope and awareness to disabilities, to encourage inclusion, and inspire action. As some of you may know, having either people in your lives touched by disabilities, that they often are forgotten, or they're looked at with pity or just indifference because people just don't know how to interact with them. And often the children, when they're in groups, you know, it's hard for them to get into the conversation, but this just makes them a superhero and special person for the time that they are able to don these amazing costumes. I have links here that I would encourage you when you get the PDF to follow through, and this is definitely a must-see video. It always makes me tear up every time I watch it, but it's really worthwhile. And this is their organization website. And so they basically, with this movement, they've gotten a lot of engagement from, like I said, common everyday folks who just love to make, all the way to experts, celebrities. This is the first major group reveal that they did in Comic-Con San Diego in 2017, the Justice League, and they literally transformed these children into superheroes. And you can see some of the quality of the builds. These are all foam, wood, PVC, you know, all sorts of things that we all have access to. And in fact, this costume really blew me away. They have moving parts. The heads of the seahorses can nod as this young lady drags onto the rein. In 2018, they did another group reveal, which was Star Wars themed. And as you can see, there's some really, I don't know if you recognize, there's a bunch of really, I don't know if you recognize some of these people. And let's see. Well, here you can see Adam Savage is also there. He was actually at the one before. So there was a lot of great engagement. And you can see again, the quality of the builds that these children were donned with. These costumes are just camera ready, super high quality. These little porgs definitely were animatronics or automated. So they moved around, turned, their wings flapped. A lot of really neat things. Lots of flashy lights, noises. So yeah. Now that you get a taste of what it was, when I first learned about Magic Wheelchair, the first thought was, I wanted to make something like this. How do I get involved? And so Dassault System really stepped up after I reached out. And since then, this is where we stand right now as support for Magic Wheelchair. For every team, we offer the free use of the SolidWorks Maker Edition. So this is the installation version, and it's free for a year that the team can use. And also with that, if a team desires, they have access to the 3D Experience platform, which has all of our online tools. And that was a sponsorship from the 3D Experience Lab. You can read more about the sponsorship following this link. Essentially, these are free online modeling software. You have it for the duration of your build, and you can leverage every part of the platform that allows you to plan your team as well as work on 3D modeling and sculpting. Lastly, currently there is an effort from our foundation, La Fondation, that supported an effort with Magic Wheelchair to sponsor some work that they're doing with students' projects. So they're working on kits, build kits and guidance for college teams, high school teams who would like to put together costumes for their local community. So there's some great effort happening there. Future support we're hoping to do is basically doing what we're good at, which is CAD. We are hoping to be able to help build a community of basic 3D models, digital twins, things that help people bring their design into reality really quickly and proof the idea before actually making it, wasting material and all that stuff. So we would love to have the ability to collect wheelchair models from customers who already use our software to design wheelchairs. You know, a lot of these kiddos are going around in wheelchairs that are designed by these folks. And if they could strip away their PI and then share just the infrastructure, the foundation of the wheelchair where things are snapped to and key sizing, we can leverage that in a lot of the costume design. So we're hoping to do some of those things in the background. Also, as you guys are obviously attending this conference to make connections and network, that's what we're hoping to do as well. As a corporation, we have a lot of connections with great fabbers, great innovators, people in the industries that really can help an organization like Magic Wheelchair. So we're hoping to really leverage that. So if you have any ideas, would love to reach out and offer your assistance, I welcome that as well, especially if you're international. I think a lot of these programs right now are focused mostly in North America, but Magic Wheelchair for sure is something that I know that they would like to expand beyond North America into other countries and other locations. So we can talk more about that later. I'm seeing comments float in, so maybe we can, let me take a look. Oh, okay, great. Well, you guys are just answering questions. All right, so the next thing I wanted to point out is currently, as some of the folks who are doing builds shifted from being able to engage with kids because a lot of them are in high risk categories and we don't want to endanger them by getting too close. So there's a lot of practicing of social distancing. A lot of these teams who have fabrication capabilities are turning to supporting the COVID-19 effort, the PPE effort. So I would encourage you, and this is what we're also doing, to join our open COVID-19 community. There's a lot of discussions about masks, ventilators, innovations on face shields. As you can see, this really is the community that brings together makers, startups, experts to share their ideas and to make things possible. So this is kind of what we're doing while we're waiting for things to get back to normal and so we can make awesome costumes again for kids. So that's another place, another support that we're putting towards the maker community. So let's dive into some of the builds and reveals. And so you can see kind of what we've been working on our side. So I've been able to pull together a group of folks who are primarily engineers, but there's definitely folks who have secret passions like sewing and artistry. So it's been really great in electronics to kind of pull them together. Here in 2018, we were able to bring a costume to life for Jonah. And he's this amazing, vivacious individual with 6 siblings. You know, he's like one of those big brothers, little brother that anyone would love to have. Huge character, loved to be in front of the camera, talk, and definitely had his own YouTube, I think he still has a YouTube channel. And he's a big fan of monster trucks. So we engaged with him, as you can see, you know, took measurements of his wheelchair, find out that one of our customers actually used our software to design this wheelchair. So we could engage them and get a digital twin of it and actually build our model to fit. And as you can see here, we leveraged a lot of the 3D Experience Lab in Boston to fabricate these pieces. One thing that Jonah really asked for was he wanted to drive this car as if he was the driver inside. So that was one of those tasks that we went from something about, you know, waist high with smaller wheels to gargantuan wheels that housed over his head. So you can see us dry fitting the frame to house this device over him. We use a lot of 3D printing for custom connections. We also use our platform to coordinate our projects, keep in mind the needs of the child. And as you can see, more photos of kind of how we pull things together. We use SolidWorks to get our assemblies right, 3D printed these quick releases. This was a hub for our wheels, so you could very quickly take it off, get into a tight, you know, these things have to fit through a regular doorway. So we needed to be able to take things apart and then put it back together very quickly. All this math we did to get the spikes just the right size. A lot of stickers and decals and vinyl cutting, spray painting, And here's the reveal at the Monster Jam Pit Party, where we also coordinated a meetup with the driver himself, Thomas, on this particular Max D costume. And one of the fun things was that we went through all the effort of 3D printing all these little rivets and making the spikes. And then when we went to see the real thing, the rivets were all just stickers. And so ours actually turned out to be more realistic than the real thing, which was kind of fun. So it also was fun to learn more about Jonah's condition. He had to go in for surgery to improve his spine. His spine was fused, so he had very limited mobility. So we had to adjust the design so that he's able to move around in it in the way he can, but he also had to go into surgery right after the reveal. So we also made a little nightlight for him during his recovery in the hospital, using our laser cutter to kind of remind him that our thoughts are with him. So that's another thing that, you know, you really get engaged with the family, and it never stops. It's awesome. In 2019, we did a Springfield Museum reveal for Ben. This particular one was a little bit more challenging because we didn't have a model. Max D was a real thing that we just kind of scaled down. This one was interesting. Ben suffered from something called smooth brain, which basically all of the little crevices in our brain that we have, we were born could also develop speech very well. He could make sounds, but he couldn't really speak. But he was a very expressive, genuine child and to work with. And he's extremely expressive, as I said. So when we came to him, we knew he loved motorcycles. We knew he had an uncle who loved motorcycles. He was a big fan of Indian motorcycles. So we actually presented him with an album of motorcycles of various kinds and wanted to see his reaction. And these top three that you see on top, the Akira type of bike, the Tron bike, and the Indian motorcycle were the ones that he gravitated to instantly and showed a lot of excitement. So we thought, let's do a mashup, why not? So our team really just dove into it. Abhishek, who's actually on the call, took on the industrial design concept. A few of the modelers on our team with CAD just like dove into different variations, and we had like a old school, you know, voting on which one made the most sense and looked the most easier to fabricate, and also something that I think Ben would feel like is something that he likes. So we went from there and did a lot of team coordination, again, using the platform. There's a tool on the platform that allows you to plan out delivery time frame. It was really great to leverage that. And once again, I'm able to take all of the facilities offered in our lab, like the CNC, a lot, and use some 3D visualization tool and 3D play some of our offerings online again to visualize what it would look like in real life. You can see again a lot of foam, a lot of sanding, a lot of painting. Here's the frame that we created for him to be ratcheted onto his wheelchair. Eventually, the pieces would be magnetically applied onto the frame. Easy to take apart, easy to assemble. And this was him on that special day. Very quiet, family-only kind of environment, because that was what Ben was interested in having. We knew it would be too much sensory overload if we had something similar to like a monster truck kind of reveal. It was a very different experience. And because Ben was much, his arms can move around much more mobile, and so we were able to provide a lot of buttons, and you could rev the handlebar to get sounds, lights. So there's a lot more electrical components to this that really help him to engage with the costume. that also kicked off another effort we were trying to tie together, like an artist perspective. Even though we're a company that supports a lot of technical software and in the technical industry, we always have an appreciation for storytelling and art. And so we engaged with some Mark Algar, who is a fine arts painter, and he actually used to be an engineer, so he could really appreciate what we went through. And here's a dedicated painting he did for the Ben build, which is really nice. And then lastly, more recently, this last February, or just this year, we were out in Nashville celebrating the 3D Experience World Conference that our company has. And what we did was actually engage with Magic Wheelchair and also have customers of ours who became build teams, one for the first time, and the other build team has done this quite a bit for Magic Wheelchair, but they all use SolidWorks and 3D Experience products. So it was really great to have them work on this. And here's an example of one of them. It was a Star Wars speeder bike of sorts. And it was very much a Mandalorian kind of inspired look. You can see they did a lot of aging, a lot of artistry. And this was actually built directly onto a vehicle, a wheelchair. And I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. But at the time in the event, because things were pretty much pre-made and they had to assemble on site, as you can see, this is like half eating lunch and half aging the things, as you guys all know how it feels to do things last minute. We were fortunate enough to have a mobile fab lab right next to our display. And these guys, Houston Mobile Unit, were just indispensable. They helped out with very quick tools that we needed, parts that we needed to get milled. So it was just amazing, perfect timing. So yeah, here you can see, this is the Bowhead Reach. It's a off-road, it's basically I wouldn't even say wheelchair, it's a sport bike, but it is optimized for someone who is either a quadriplegic, paraplegic, but it's extremely suitable for someone who's older and have core strength and able to navigate the terrain using just the handlebars. And this is kind of what you see Jacob, who's the child recipient of this, riding. He has his legs out, and this was amazing time for him and his family at the event. The second build was a Beauty and the Beast build, and you can see the quality of the build. This is Matt Long and his partner doing this work. It's amazing. It's just the quality. These are all 3D printed pieces, all painted beautifully and wired up for lighting. There's even a button to trigger some music. And the badge, the shield, everything was just perfect, all mounted to the wheelchair the day of. And that family was able to receive the costume at the event and got to do a little parade. So it was an amazing experience for everyone. And because the families were so kind to leave their costume behind for a couple of days, we also made them little night lights to take home with them for 2 days before they get their costumes afterwards. So there's one that was reminiscent of the rose for the Beauty and the Beast one. And also now you have a draft drawing of the rider for Jacob. So these are Trinity and Jacob for their costumes. So the build experience, for those of you who basically are curious, like what is involved in this, in our groups, there are certain roles that is, it could either be a role for one person or one person could have multiple roles here. But these are basically the critical parts, elements of a good team. And I'll break, you can review this later, but let me talk a bit about what each group would be doing. In our case, the team leader really was the one that sorted out the schedule, got the procurement for material, did a lot of communication with the team members as well as the family members. The communicators were really the ones, this could be the team leader, but the communicator was the one that really was a liaison between the family, the builders, the designers, because they need to understand what are the limitations in the abilities of the child, what are the preferences, what is the story. In this case, we wanted to tie in some of the Indian motorcycle because we understood that there was a family engagement with the the museum that housed this collection. Ben's uncle was very engaged in that community. So there's a really big tie to that part of the story. So that's why a lot of the decal really paid tribute to the Indian motorcycle style. So those are the things that, you know, you want to capture. In the makers and the fabricator side of things, you have, for example, people who are just great at calculating and figuring out the logic. You have people who are very quick in prototyping cardboard and then eventually bringing it to life in foam. You have folks who can come up with really innovative ways for quick releases. We got someone on our team who are just an expert cosplay designer, so she was able to pull together some really cool pit crew hats for all of us. And just, you know, there's definitely people with skill sets that they may not have been confident about, but had interest in. And by being part of the build team, they had the opportunity to improve those skills, hone it, and just, you know, surprise themselves in the success of the solution. So those are just great people to have. This is one of those roles that's like a super unsung hero. For those people who are not, you know, don't feel confident about putting the time into building something because, you know, they have two left thumbs, you know, like they just can't, you know, you give them something, they'll just inevitably break it. But those people often come together in making the calls, talking to the event managers, coordinating a reveal, you know, the type of timing, coinciding with a birthday, you know, those things of planning and all that stuff is super important. So in this case, you can see on the left side, the people involved in trying to get a meet up with the driver, getting a day when they can get private time, just having that kind of, getting media to cover the event. Whereas the one for Ben on the right side is because he needed something much more private and intimate. It was a lot of family, extended family, uncles, aunts, grandma, grandpa, that kind of environment. It was extremely well put together. So, and it's a quiet place like a museum. So, you know, these are people who plan these things amazingly well. Helping hands. And these are folks that may not have the weekly commitment to the project, but maybe 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 days in a row, they have some free time. They come in, just like, give me something, I'll do anything for you guys. And then you hand them a block of, a sanding block, a mask, and be like, sand away. And that's what they do. And they're great. These are wonderful helpers in all ways. And then storytellers. Once again, you know, those are not super technical, are the ones that tell the story of the child, to help fundraise for the build for Magic Wheelchair, to tell about how things are coming together. These are, I think, the heart and soul of the build, and these are critical people to be able to make this happen. So here, I'm gonna dive a bit deeper into kind of like, if you're already starting to get interested, what you're getting yourself into. This comes straight out of the Magic Wheelchair build manual. They suggest kind of a framing of this. You got design, effort, you know, you got a mock-up of the wheelchair so you can properly size everything. And there's a lot of elements to it that you may not think about before the build, but while you're doing it, you realize you should do these things. So, you know, so there's a lot of prototyping and finalizing, and these are kind of the breakdown of days. So altogether, roughly 20 full days, about 10 weekends if you were to only work on it on weekends, in kind of this breakdown. Now, for us, it was a different reality because all of us worked full time and also in the same location, and where we can build actually is not at home, it's at the facility at work. So it fell into, you know, when can we stay later at work? How many weekends can we give up before our family disown us? You know, that kind of thing. So with that, we were able to kind of break it down into this logic. In our case, even though we had lots of people who wanted to help, probably around 12, 15 people, really in reality, there were about 6 people that were the core members. There were always 2 of the 6 people constantly working on it. And, you know, on weekends at home kind of thing. And about 10 of them roughly will hop in and out as they are available. And we usually rely on maybe 1 to 2 days after work for an additional 4 hours. And then on the weekend, we spend one weekend for a full like 8 hours at the lab to get some of these things done. A lot of like skills building, as most of us are engineers. We work with sheet metal and metal and mechanism screws and stuff like that. We don't work with foam, hard coats, that kind of stuff. So we have to learn. And then we have straight on 6 weeks of flat out assembly, modeling, paints, all that stuff. Roughly the costs go from, this is American dollars, 1,500 to about 2,000 cost on the materials. We do a lot of individual donations. Team members would go to Home Depot and purchase things and just eat the receipt kind of thing, or we also rely on our lab to provide a lot of materials. And also it was helpful to have those facility tools to leverage. So it really is something that each team has to be comfortable about. I know some of the build teams who have worked with local maker spaces or manufacturing companies that have extra material that donate to their build. So those are all viable if you have those kinds of connections. And at the end of the day, even though we like struggle and get things done and stress, every time after we hand the costume off, inevitably someone will say, when are we doing it again? When's the next build? So it's a really satisfying experience. So now let me jump to a few more tips, and then I think we have plenty of time to answer questions. This again, lifted off from Magic Wheelchair, some really, really great advice. And our team absolutely drew on to this, and we can highly recommend sticking to this kind of mentality. All else at the utmost important, whenever we have to as a team decide, oh, should we go with this? Should it be red? Should it be green? Whatever. We always go back to the kiddo. What did they say? What was the thing that they really wanted? What would make them feel better? That was really the deciding factor in every single case. We always listen to the family because we know that they know better, even though if the child says, I want this and this and this, but the family members say, actually, this is probably a safer solution. We always go with the family thoughts. Think big. I feel like that by the nature of us being makers, we always think big. So I don't think this is something that you're going to have trouble with. But, we want the whole thing to be something that is bigger than what the child is. We don't necessarily want to hide their disability unless that's what they want, but we do want to make them feel like the person they feel like inside. You can tell, just they're superheroes, every single one of them. So how do we make this costume above and beyond and actually match that heart that they have in there, that desire, that dream? So think big. Design to your strengths. This is something funny, as you can see, like our first 2 builds are vehicles with wheels. Not that we've really actively thought about it, but definitely if you're in a group of people who are very comfortable designing vehicles or hard edges and things that are just like machine type look, go with that. But our team this year have decided we would do, for a stretch goal, we want to do something different, more organic, something that's more fantastic. So we're going with a castle idea. But, if you have a team that's very good at doing something, definitely for your first build, leverage that strength. But I encourage you to push your comfort zone. And there's some really amazing costumes out there. If you look at some of the posts from Magic Wheelchair, there was one that I really love, which is the 3-headed dog from Harry Potter. It was all just a giant, furry, awesome, huggable thing. And I would love to make that. I just don't have the skills right now. Push yourself. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of the design to your strength, but also push yourself. And the whole idea is that if you push yourself and you can deliver something that is out of this world, you have basically inspired everyone else that have heard your story and want to do this as well. So definitely do your best, because the people that benefit from this is the kiddo, their family, and you. And it just really inspires other people to do so. And make sure at the end of the day, you're not running a team ragged. Everyone should enjoy it. There should definitely be a payoff for everyone who's putting time, money, effort into it. It is something that it should, if they're not happy doing it, maybe perhaps this is not the right thing for them, or maybe so make sure that it's something that matches with your own goals. Lastly, I think this is the last, no, two more. The actions you can take. If you are basically at the point where you're like, okay, I want to do something about this, I want to take action, sign me up. You actually have to sign yourself up. Just so you know, just before I even go into that point, right now, because of COVID-19, as I mentioned before, everything's kind of on a pause. Lots of builds are maybe still in the concept phase and actually being fabricated, but not fitted onto the kiddos, because engagement with kiddos right now is still very high risk. So a lot of the builders have turned to, that's a typo, taken to making PPEs. And that's really great. So you can read all about their efforts on their Facebook pages. I would say, if you want to start engaging, building a team, connecting with Magic Wheelchair, go to their site. They have great user interface to kind of volunteer, donate. Even if you don't feel like you're comfortable in actually building something yet, you can definitely help fundraise. There's like birthday efforts. You can donate money through your birthday. You can donate with a special cause webpage. So they have all those mechanisms to help you set it up. If you decide you do, or another thing is also if you have someone in your family or someone in your community or of who would love something like this, definitely nominate them. There's also a form online that you can fill out to do that. Check with their parents first, of course, or their guardian. Volunteer, start your team, join a team, be the representative, a mentor of those teams if there are other teams around in the area. Basically, help with the skills that you have in your facilities. And for those, and I believe there's some people not from the North American area, as basically we are, but I would say sign up as well. As far as I know, and maybe Christine can chime in later, they are trying to start up teams outside of the US. And definitely, especially if you're interested in representing and helping to mentor teams out there, to start this kind of effort internationally. And of course, our products, the Dassault Systems products and software that we offer to the build teams now would apply to any build teams internationally. So that would also still be true. And then also just start working on your skills that you want to hone, especially through, I believe they still offer this, the Stan Winston School of Character Arts is a partner with Magic Wheelchair. They have some really fantastic courses online that teaches you how to work with foam, sculpting, things that could definitely leverage the skills that you already have. So some free courses that way. And yeah, and again, once you get a hold of this PDF, you can follow some of these links directly. There's a builder's guide that Magic Wheelchair provide. There are also a few communities, a public community that DS provide for folks who want to talk about Magic Wheelchair there, if you're already on 3D Swim. And then the other two are Facebook communities for Magic Wheelchair that's really active, some really good stuff. And I'm going to then, yes, open it up to questions. I think this is pretty much my presentation. Let me see if I have any questions for folks.
Thank you, Mrs. Chinloo Lama. It was a wonderful session and it inspired us a lot. So if participants, if you have any questions, you can just chat it in the chat box so that we can answer it. Participants, please do ask if you have any questions.
While you guys are doing that, let me bring back, I think I'll just leave it at this slide. I think there's a slide of roles. Actually, I could probably show you some of the things on the website while you guys are coming up with questions. I don't know, Christine, did you want to chime in? Let's see.
Ms. Chinloo, should I read the questions or like
Yes,
we have some?
please.
Okay. Okay. The first question. It's from Abhishek, and he's asking like, can you remind everyone how much time an average build takes?
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Thanks, Abhishek. I think for the 2 builds we've had, at least for us, it's like I mentioned, we all have our regular jobs, and when we were putting in afternoons and weekends sometimes. So it sometimes takes us, a couple of weeks or so just to nail down a design. But when the time comes to actually fabricate inside the lab, it has been around 6 weeks or so, coupled with full-time jobs, meaning we haven't taken any time off. But according to Magic Wheelchair, I think they were saying the entire build was roughly 20 days. So I think if you're committing to it that way, that might be an easier way for you to break it down. But for us, it was very much we have full-time jobs, and then we pulled in a few hours, 4 hours during the week, and then maybe 8 hours on the weekend. So that stretched out to be about 6 weeks with about 6 people active all the time. I hope that explains it.
Can you hear me?
Oh yes, Christine, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm glad you could join.
Yeah, it's been great to just see everyone's passion. I just wanted to chime in on that as well. We originally suggested an 8-week build timeline, but I mean, I think that really depends. I'm not sure if this applies to your team, but getting the measurements can often be the biggest delay in that timeline. So while we're having this downtime, we're working on more ways to get measurements without having to meet the kiddos, which is especially relevant right now with COVID. But everything's kind of on hold and up in the air.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, we've been very flexible about the timing because we always, at the end of the day, we always coordinate with the family. Right. If we can't make the first deadline, usually we have like a nice to have deadline, and then we say, okay, well, things have changed a little bit. When is the next best time? So it's been like that, but we hadn't changed a deadline. I think Ben is probably the one, because that one was a little harder to build. So that one we had to push it out a bit, but otherwise, yeah, I think 6 to 8 weeks sounds absolutely reasonable.
And it also depends on when they want it. That can dictate the deadline, because we often have we have a section of the application that sometimes they'll fill out, and you'll say, when do you want this? And a lot of general, just Halloween or whenever, and then sometimes they'll have a specific date, like a birthday or a Comic-Con or a Monster Jam. So it's true, the kids are the bosses. I think you had that on one of your slides.
Exactly. I have another question here that says, will you be integrating PPE into the costumes, including a shield or face covering on the build so kids can venture into the world? That's a very interesting point.
That's interesting. Yeah. I think it would just depend on the family, honestly. I mean, we've always said don't cover their faces, but if you could have a spaceship with a shield, not only be rad but protective, I think that could be a really great thing.
That's exactly. Well, we know that at least with Jacob, he was the one that received the Star Wars speed fighter. The bike, and he seemed very shy to begin with. I think having the helmet on his head really helped him open up. Right. Because it just, so I think even like a costume that maybe is a PPE in disguise, that, so I could definitely see that as something that works into the costume.
Yeah, we've seen some of our Star Wars cosplay volunteers post selfies during this age of COVID in their Stormtrooper outfit in the grocery store. Exactly. I don't know how protective that actually is, but I do like the concept of combining the two.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could make it really protective on the inside. You just can't see it. Right.
That's a great
idea.
Very
cool. Yeah, it's a very good idea. And then the second one, let's see, another question. What would you say is the biggest obstacle or challenge for the project? Ooh. Let me see.
my gosh.
I'm sure you have lots of stories, Christine. Let me see if I can dive into one first. For us, the two builds that we did that was our own, like we didn't have customers, it was just our staff working with the family. I think the obstacle for the first one was really, because we haven't done it before, we don't know how real to make everything and how far to push it. And we were really struggling because we knew we were all engineers and we could put things together perfectly well. So we designed it to that way, but then there are times we said, well, would the parents know how to do it? Because they have to put it together. So at one point we had to adjust certain designs, knowing that me being a user experience designer very quickly was just like, no, it has to be easy. Even I have to do it. I actually made a instruction manual at the end to give to the parents. So the second build, we learned from our mistakes. And that's kind of why we designed it so that it can be taken apart very easily, like a jigsaw puzzle, but in a very clear, like left side, right side, front, back kind of way. And everything was magnetically adhered to. So you saw like in that build, the frame, instead of being a PVC kind of like stick frame, it was actually a much more substantial tank-like wooden frame that had magnets embedded in parts of it, so that you can just take the foam pieces and just snap it on. And that turned out to be really, really good. So I would say that that kind of like construction constraints and thinking ahead on the user experience for the parents, because they are going to wear it again for Halloween, for other things. So that would be another obstacle. I don't know if you want to add anything, Christine.
Sorry, my mute button was on. And I think we've got a whole list of challenges, but one that might be across the board is just on the builder side. We've had so many people question their own ability, and that can hold them back or be afraid to ask for help. So I just want to reiterate here that we've got a whole community and list of builders from the past and present. And if there's a question or an uncertainty about how to do something, we will figure it out together.
Yeah, actually that's perfect. Perfect segue to that another question here, like how difficult is SolidWorks? I have a really hard time with 3D CAD. I think, speaking exactly to Christine's point, that also on the CAD side, because SolidWorks and a lot of the Dassault people are very engaged in working with Magic Wheelchair, that if you opt for the software and you would like to have training or understanding on how to use it, or at least just get more comfortable, dangerous enough or comfortable enough to be dangerous with the software, we're more than capable of providing that kind of guidance and even pointing you to training material that you automatically have access to. So there's definitely a lot of that community support that would be there for you if you choose to work with it. I would never be as vain as to say that SolidWorks is super easy to use compared to 3D CAD and stuff like that, but definitely I think with some training and some short tutorials, you definitely will feel confident enough to do what you need to get the costume where it has to go, especially if you're looking for CNC work. Getting things milled, you definitely need digital versions.
Absolutely. And also we should reiterate that it's not required that you use CAD. If there's a piece of your costume that you maybe need milled out or need 3D printed, we can connect you with somebody with those skills to help keep the project moving forward. So I think all of these resources are just a way to actually make the project more inclusive rather than exclusive to a certain set of skills.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I think all the way through to 3D printing, milling, even laser cutting, a lot of these things can be definitely you can reach out to either through Magic Wheelchair to get that kind of connection, or if you already have connections with folks in your local maker spaces. And basically it would be a reason why you're on this call if you're trying to network with other makers. Those are your resources,
This question,
I got another question, hold on. Is there expansion to include costumes for adults in wheelchairs too? Hey, Christine, you and I were just talking about this. You want to talk to?
I'm so eager to break the rules. Actually, I think in the next quarter or two, we'll have an official vote with the board of directors and change the bylaws. I've broken the rules a little bit. Last year for Rose City Comic Con, we built the alien power loader for a young lady named Jasmine. So she broke the age limit, but I speak to this a lot, and I think this COVID pandemic is shedding light on that even more. You know, for people with disabilities, I don't know if you can see my photo, but I'm in a wheelchair myself, and oftentimes service is cut off when you turn 18. And I just feel like self-expression and cosplay shouldn't be one of those things that ends when you become an adult. So long and short answer is yes, we plan to expand to adults.
Absolutely.
We have a wait list of kiddos that still keeps me up at night, but hopefully we can find a way that the two programs can support one another.
Yeah. Good question.
I love it.
I think that's it. Great. The same person said, I have a Fab Lab in Greece and would love to start a project with you. I'll sign up. Okay, there you go.
I will look out for it.
Yeah, so I guess lastly, yeah, Abhishek is a good point. For you, Christine, is there any kind of messaging you would like to share with the Fab Labs community here, the folks that are listening in?
Yeah, I actually saw a familiar name on the screen, but I think he just jumped off, Nathan. But I think for Fab Lab folks, you know, we have a long list of volunteers, and some of you may have already signed up. We don't know who's functioning right now and who isn't. So if you've signed up and you're waiting, feel free to just send us another note to remind us. We would just like to know who's available right now. And if you're working on PPE, of course, that's way more important. But to Fab Lab folks, we thank you, and we're so grateful for your expertise and your skills and your ability to break down these projects and make them even more digestible. So really it's just gratitude for everyone who's on this call today, and we're so excited to work with you.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, and also I would encourage those who, if you're, working also with local schools, working into getting some sort of project together for school teams, definitely also reach out to Magic Culture, and Christine especially is, we've been talking about this as well. I know Brown University here in Providence, Rhode Island, we're also connecting with them to try to coordinate something now. So I encourage others to look into that as well, especially, there's that FIRST Robotics kind of environment for students who are very technically minded and want to solve those types of puzzles, but you also have other folks who are looking for more of the social connections with the project. So this is definitely a good counterpart to something more technical like that.
Any more questions, participants?
I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Chinloo, for joining, and Mrs. Christine. It was an awesome session, and you guys inspired a lot. So I think we can wind up, right?
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and listening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, did you want to say something? Good to see you, Jason.
Yeah, just Popeyes to say thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chinloo.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. I'll catch up with you separately. I have to send you a giant email. So.
Just after presentation.
All right, thanks. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Be safe.